Hello and welcome to Midnight Sleep Scientist. I'm glad you found this quiet corner of the night. Perhaps you're already settling down, the room dim, the window a cool square of darker blue. Perhaps the day has been full, and now it asks to be set down gently. Tonight we follow a question that sounds almost mischievous, and yet stays with you once it arrives. Are we inside a black hole? Not as a thrill or a scare, but as a way of seeing boundaries and interiors, horizons and hopes. We'll move slowly through gravity's language, through the patient geometry of space and time, pausing often, letting ideas arrive like distant starlight. If you drift off along the way, that's perfectly fine. And if you're still awake later, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. A city window, a farmhouse, a ship at anchor, a quiet dorm room. For now, let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unhook. Let curiosity stroll, rather than run. We'll begin with the edge of a thought, and discover that edges, like night, are softer than they seem. Picture your room as it is, the familiar outlines gentled by shadow, the hum of a distant appliance, the soft crease of fabric where your pillow meets your cheek. This is the small world you can touch. Outside, the sky holds its vastness, and for a moment, the two scales, room and universe, rest together like nested bowls. Now the question tiptoes in. What does it mean for a universe to have an inside? We are used to containers. A cup has an inside, a shell has an inside, a train car, a coat pocket. But the universe, it doesn't sit in something else the way a marble sits in a hand. At least that's what our best maps suggest. Space is not in a room. Space is the room, the everywhere room, and everything we know is furniture within it. And yet, the phrase inside a black hole has a specific scientific meaning. A black hole is not merely darkness, but a region bounded by a horizon, the event horizon beyond which all possible paths tilt inward, not because some monster is tugging, but because space-time itself bends so that away and out change their meanings. Inside the horizon, all futures lean toward a center of no return. Outside, futures fan out to stars, to radio towers, to the gentle place you're resting now. So why would anyone ask if our whole universe could be such an interior? The thought has a certain symmetry. Our observable cosmos has a horizon too, a distance beyond which light has not had time to reach us since the beginning. We already live inside a bubble, not because there is a wall, but because time has limits. From within this bubble, the distant reaches slip away faster than our signals can chase them. In that way, our cosmic neighborhood resembles an inside, a softly bounded place, horizon held. Perhaps that likeness is poetic only, or perhaps it hints that horizons are a deeper theme in physics, not merely things that hide, but surfaces that encode. Some theories suggest horizons carry temperature, entropy, even information, as if the edge of what we can see knows a little about the whole. It is an elegant thought, and elegance is a kind of quiet lure, but we must move carefully. Not every beautiful idea is true, so we ask the question slowly: could the outside of our space, the larger reality if there is one, be like the exterior of a black hole in some grander arena? Could our Big Bang be the interior unfolding of a collapse that happened elsewhere, elsewhen, the inside of an outside we cannot access? This is where words begin to blur, because elsewhere assumes a larger space to be located in, and our physics does not require that such a space exist. Still, the question is useful. It teaches us what we mean by edge and limit. A shoreline is an edge you can walk to. A horizon is an edge you can only approach. The universe seems full of horizons and shy of shorelines. In your life too, there are horizons. Things you move toward that recede as you near them. Patience, wisdom, rest. You don't arrive all at once. You inhabit the moving edge. If we are inside anything at all, it might be a horizon of understanding that widens as we do. Science is a long, kind walk along that moving boundary, making careful notes, testing, doubting, smiling when a pattern holds, adjusting when it doesn't. The black hole universe idea lives near that boundary, not forbidden, not established, an invitation to think more clearly about gravity and beginnings. For now, we sit with the night, The room is steady, the world is large, and our question is gentle. If the universe has an inside, we are within it by definition. But that is not the same as being inside a black hole. To learn the difference, we'll need to understand what a black hole truly is, less a thing than a way space and time arrange themselves when mass and energy crowd in. Let your breath lengthen. We'll go there next. Quietly. Begin with a sheet of fabric in your mind. Nothing fancy, just a steady, pliant surface. In Einstein's telling, gravity is not a force that reaches out like invisible fingers. It is the bending of that fabric by mass and energy. Planets don't cling to stars. They follow the nearest thing to a straight line on a surface that has become curved by the star's presence. Straight lines that are not straight. It sounds like wordplay until you remember that on Earth, the shortest path between two faraway cities is a curve on a globe. Geometry is the quiet boss of motion. Now imagine compressing matter until the curve steepens into a funnel so deep that every possible path at its rim tilts inward. That rim is the event horizon. From just outside it, light can still dash away, though with effort. From just inside, all roads lead down, not quickly, necessarily. It depends on how you ride time, but inevitably, there is no sturdy platform hidden within, no cavern full of stars. There is a region where the tilt of future itself points inward, like rain drawn to a drain. The phrase singularity is often whispered here. It is not a place in the usual sense, not a speck you could point to and name. It is where our equations signal that the curvature becomes extreme, perhaps infinite, and our known physics loses its grip. In practical terms, it marks the limit of the theory's comfort, a sign that quantum gravity, our unfinished bridge between the very large and the very small, must take over. We do not yet have that full bridge. That's all right. Night is patient. Black holes are tidy in one way. They have few descriptors. Mass, spin, charge. That spare list is called no hair. Two black holes that share those properties are, as far as the external world can tell, the same. It's an odd kind of simplicity after the riot of details in a star or a cloud, simplicity that hides mystery. What becomes of the information about all that falls in? Does it vanish? Does it smear across the horizon in some encrypted way? Does it leak back out as faint heat over unimaginable time? These questions are not mere puzzles. They're lanterns we hold up to the dark to see what physics is made of. And here is a common misunderstanding, worth softening. A black hole is not a cosmic vacuum cleaner, gobbling everything with equal hunger. You could orbit a black hole safely at a respectful distance. The way Earth orbits the Sun, replace the Sun with a black hole of the same mass, and Earth's path would hardly change, though the days would grow cold and starry. The danger lies in approaching too near, where the geometry steepens and nearer quickly becomes no return. Sometimes when a star collapses and the horizon forms, the outside world sees a quieting glow. The star's last light crawls upward, red-shifting, fading, as if time itself were stretching thin near the edge. From far away, the collapse seems to freeze at the horizon. From the falling star's own clock, the journey continues, two truths held by two clocks, both correct in their frames. Gravity is not only about where, it is about when. So what of being inside? If you were to cross an event horizon, no alarms, no sensation at that precise moment, you would notice only that your possible futures have narrowed. The laws of physics would feel the same locally. The way the ground beneath your feet feels solid, whether you stand on a plain or a mountainside. But the map of time around you would be different. Every choice leads inward. The center, whatever it truly is written into your future as surely as a destination chosen long ago. Does our universe share this flavor of inevitability? The resemblance is partial at best. Our cosmic expansion suggests that, on the largest scales, most pathways pull outward, not inward. Galaxies drift apart. Distant light stretch. The horizon that bounds our observations is not a one-way membrane we cross, but a limit set by age and speed, a gentle boundary of what can have reached us yet. Still similarities whisper. Horizons that hold temperature, fields that hum at emptiness, the mathematics of curvature, tying together black holes, and the cosmos like two verses of the same song. It's tempting to declare the song resolved that because two melodies rhyme, they must be the same tune. But science asks for more than rhyme. It asks for testable refrains. Are there signatures we could look for that would say yes? Our universe is the interior of a larger collapse. Or no, it is simply an expanding space with its own beginning that needs no exterior. Those clues live several chapters ahead. For now, let your mind rest on the simplest picture. A black hole is a region where the future leans in. Its boundary is a horizon, not a wall. Its interior is a commitment written into geometry. It is less a monster than a mood of space-time, one that appears when matter gathers too closely, and while it lends us metaphors for our own lives, points of no return, choices that change the shape of what remains. Its physics is plain in its humility. Follow the shortest paths allowed by the fabric you inhabit. Take a breath. Feel the bed holding you as gravity always has. Steadfast, unannounced. Outside, the sky keeps its counsel. Inside, questions grow quiet edges. We'll meet horizons next, the many kinds, and see how an edge can be both a limit and a lantern. Step to a window in your mind. Let the night be a gentle canvas, a dark blue hush where only a few lights linger. Somewhere a tree sways. Somewhere a late train drifts past, like a soft sentence. Your view has edges, window frame, curtains, the angle where glass meets sky. Beyond those borders, the world continues, but your seeing does not. That small truth is the beginning of horizons. In physics, a horizon is not a fence to be climbed. It is a limit on what can be known or influenced from a given perch in space and time. The language is precise, and at the same time, deeply human. We live with horizons each day. The farthest hill you can see on a clear morning, the edge of the sea as it curls under the earth, the last message that arrives before your phone slips out of range. We are creatures of partial views, and that does not diminish us. It shapes our patience. There are many horizons, and each asks where you stand, how you move, how the universe itself flows beneath you. For a black hole, the event horizon is the boundary from which light cannot escape to infinity. It is a global statement about all of time, made by the geometry. You don't feel it as you cross. No alarm, no scrape of metal. Locally, the laws behave as they always have. The change hides in the book of your possible futures, where every page now angles inward. But the event horizon has cousins. In dynamic spacetimes, those that stretch, swell, collapse. Physicists speak of apparent horizons, surfaces that at a given moment gather light more than they let it drift away. These are local creatures, dependent on an instant slice of the world. They can grow, shrink, even vanish, as matter moves and space reshapes itself. If the event horizon is a promise written for the whole story, the apparent horizon is a snapshot, a weather report that needs the next frame to be complete. Then there are cosmological horizons, softer still. Our universe has an age. Light travels at a finite speed, so there is a farthest region from which signals could possibly have reached us since the beginning. The particle horizon, it defines our observable universe, not as a rigid globe, but as a softly receding limit that grows with time. Each second adds a thin shell of knowability. Each year, the map includes a little more, a related horizon, the Hubble horizon, or more carefully, a scale set by the expansion rate whispers something slightly different, where the separation between us and distant galaxies grows faster than light can bridge, not because those galaxies are racing through space, but because space itself is swelling between us. Their signals struggle to close the gap. The balloon analogy helps. Dots on an inflating surface drift apart without moving on the surface itself. No dot is the center. Every dot can say, honestly, that all others recede. It's an image with limits, but it holds the flavor of expansion without edge. Some horizons appear only for the accelerated. Imagine a steadily speeding spaceship, or a person standing in a strong gravitational field that mimics constant acceleration. Such an observer sees a boundary behind them, a Rindler horizon beyond which events cannot catch up. Nothing physical sits there. It's a horizon stitched from motion. In a quiet universe, you could create your own horizon simply by the way you move, and in universes with a gentle, persistent push, like one dominated by a cosmological constant, there is a de sitter horizon, a kind of cosmological event horizon, set not by collapse, but by endless, accelerated expansion. It carries a temperature, a faint whisper of heat, the way a black hole horizon does. That rhyme, that horizons radiate when quantum fields brush against them, has become one of the century's most intriguing refrains. It suggests that horizons are not merely places where knowledge ends, but places where information and heat and time entangle. But we should pause here and walk carefully. Not every horizon is the same. The event horizon of a black hole is a one-way membrane toward an interior future that ends, classically, in a singularity. Our cosmological horizon is a two-way story limited by age and speed, one that changes as the universe ages. The Hubble scale is not a hard barrier. Clever, nearby objects can still exchange light across it if the flow of expansion changes or if local motions help. The balloon picture can mislead if we try to inflate it too far. Space is not a substance that stretches like rubber, and there is no literal outside air. These are sketches, meant to bring the feeling close, not to replace the quiet authority of the equations. What we can keep is the mood. Horizons are relational. They depend on who you are, where you are, and how the cosmos breathes around you. Our night sky shows one plainly. The last scattering surface, the shell from which the cosmic microwave background arrives. Those photons left a hot, ionized fog when the universe was young, and finally transparent. They have been traveling ever since, stretched by expansion into microwaves that now murmur from every direction, a baby picture wrapped around us. It is not a horizon in the strictest sense, but it feels like one. Beyond it, the universe was opaque to light. We peer to that limit and no farther with ordinary seeing. Life understands horizons intuitively. Sailors know the line where sea kisses sky. Desert walkers gauge distance by mirage edges. City dwellers feel the horizon in the sudden bright turn where streets end and river begins. Even in thought we meet horizons, what we can hold in working memory, the reach of a language we're still learning, the patience we have on a given day. Our minds make apparent horizons too, boundaries that evolve with rest, with nourishment, with time. So when we ask, are we inside a black hole? We are also asking which horizon we mean. Do we mean a point of no return in the map of time? Do we mean a limit of sight that grows as light has its chance? Do we mean a horizon that glows with a faint temperature, as some deep theories suggest, encoding the world on its boundary like a library written on glass? The shapes differ, but a theme returns. Information and limitation walk together. A horizon marks what you cannot know yet, or cannot change anymore, and in marking it reveals structure. In this way, edges are lanterns. They trace the contours of the room, even as they keep the room from being infinite all at once in your mind. Imagine lying back now, feeling your own horizon, the edge of your body against the sheets, the soft limits of your senses in the quiet. The world has not ended at those edges. It simply rests beyond them until morning. So too with the cosmos. Its horizons do not shame us. They give us shape, and as time flows, some horizons recede. We learn, we see, we soften. Next, we'll let the universe stretch in our hands, not to pull it thin, but to watch how metrics, distances, and colors change as space itself changes. Scale. Where do redshifts come from? How does a galaxy a billion light-years away become a friend we know by light? We will walk that widening shore slowly, with the night beside us. Hold a strand of light between finger and thumb. If only in imagination, let it be a thread pulled from a distant galaxy's glow. As you watch, the thread lengthens, not because your hand moves, but because the loom itself, the space between, shifts its set. That is one way to feel cosmic expansion, not objects fleeing through a pre-existing room, but the room's scale changing gently underfoot. Once we pictured space as a stage, reliable and firm, where matter danced. Then came the awareness that the stage joins the dance. Distances are not carved into stone. They are negotiated by the metric, the rule book for measuring in a curved, evolving universe. In that book, a single symbol often stands in for the universe's size at a moment. The scale factor. When it grows, co-moving markers drift apart, even if they nap in place. When it grows quickly, recessions quick. No explosion from a center, no shrapnel rushing outward. Instead, a loaf rising with raisins held in the dough, each raisin watching others recede with a speed proportional to their separation. We heard that story first as a relational melody. The farther, the faster. Observers stitched it into a linear law at small distances, a law of recessional speed and range that became a signature of expansion. The slope of that line, the expansion rate, has changed with time. It is not a metronome, it's a breathing. Early, when radiation and matter were dense, gravity worked as a brake. Later, when a smoother energy, the vacuum's own pressure perhaps, rose to prominence, the expansion began to accelerate. A quiet quickening that surprised the late 20th century and still invites careful listening. Redshift is the tender label we give to light's stretch as it rides an expanding sea. Photons launched in blue at a cosmic dawn arrive to us, gentled into red, then into infrared, into microwaves, their crests farther apart, their energy slightly spent by the voyage through growing space. It is not a loss to friction or fog, it is the honest accounting of wave on widening distances. When we plot redshift against distance or look back time, we are reading the diary of the scale factor. Each spectrum is a dated page, each line a remembered moment. This stretching story carries a comfort and a caution. The comfort: we can read the universe with humble tools, glass, mirrors, silicon, patient nights. The caution: distance in a changing space-time wears different masks. There is the light travel time, the co-moving distance that remains fixed for objects riding the flow, the proper distance you would measure with rulers at a given moment, the angular diameter distance that connects size and angle on the sky, and the luminosity distance that marries brightness to cosmic geometry. These are not tricks, they are adapters between the same signal and different questions. Which distance do you mean? The universe asks in reply. Which story are you trying to tell? If we lean back into deep time, a simple chronology might help, softened by caveats. There was a hot, dense beginning, not a point in space, but an early era everywhere at once, in which temperatures and densities were high and particle interactions rapid. As the scale factor grew, the plasma cooled. About a few 100,000 years after the beginning, electrons and protons found it pleasant to join as neutral atoms. Photons, once scattered by charged particles at every step, now roamed free. That released light as the cosmic microwave background, arriving today as a nearly perfect black-body glow cooling with the universe, mapping tiny ripples, temperature bumps and dips that would later seed galaxies. Before that release, the universe was a fluid of radiation and matter that danced to the tune of pressure and gravity. Sound waves, real, compressional waves rippled through it. Their echoed scales remain written in today's galaxy distribution, as subtle preferences in spacing, the so-called acoustic imprint, a fossil pattern we can measure with great quiet surveys. These measurements, along with supernovae that act like standardizable candles, and the whisper of weak lensing that bends light by intervening mass, add up to a picture, a cosmos largely flat, on large scales, made of ordinary matter in small proportion, a heavier, invisible matter that clusters and guides, and a smooth energy that the equations interpret as a cosmological constant, or something like it, encouraging the expansion to accelerate. We speak gently here, because our certainty lives in the measurements, not in metaphors or in the hunger for closure. Perhaps dark energy is exactly that simple, a constant of nature, an energy of empty space that neither ebbs nor flows. Perhaps it is more textured, a field that changes with time, a story with chapters we haven't turned yet. Perhaps our map of gravity itself will need revising at grand scales, though such revisions carry responsibilities. They must match the many successes of the current map in the nearby world. For now, the simplest reading fits the largest pile of clues. We go with it, gladly but not stubbornly. Back at the personal scale, expansion is polite. It does not tear atoms, does not stretch you thinner on your bed. Local bonds, electromagnetic here, nuclear there, gravity close by, hold their neighborhood steady. Expansion speaks in the language of great emptiness, measurable across megaparsecs, not across kitchen tables. Even galaxies bound in a cluster hardly heed the universal drift. Their local gravity choreographs their own ballet, on scales of hundreds of millions of light years and larger though, the breathing of space sets the tempo. We sometimes ask where the center is, and the question is natural, born from a life lived in rooms and towns, but in a homogeneous isotropic universe, the smooth, directionless model that the sky largely endorses, there is no privileged center inside space. Every point can claim the same view statistically. Every point can draw the same circles of average density. The center, if we must have one, is lodged in time. The beginning happened everywhere at once. When everywhere was small, what then does expansion say to our black hole question? On first glance it counters it. A black hole interior is a place where world lines converge, where geodesics lean inward. Our universe on large scales sees world lines that lean apart. Galaxies receding as the metric grows, the arrows point outward instead of in. Yet, the mathematics knows secret doors. Inside some black hole solutions, if one flips the roles of space and time the right way, the geometry resembles an expanding universe. That rhyme has tempted many to write a bridge between collapse and cosmos. Beautiful, yes. Compelling, sometimes. Complete, not yet. We will visit those bridges carefully in a later chapter. For now, let us keep the comfort of what we read directly from the sky. The microwave background hums like a warm memory. Galaxy surveys sketch a cosmic web, filaments and nodes, voids like silent squares in a quilt. Exploding stars mark how brightness thins with distance in a way that implies acceleration. Altogether, they tell us we live in a universe that stretches, not from a center but as a whole, a changing scale that carries light as surely as rivers carry leaves. If you're still drifting with me, notice how your own sense of scale can change from moment to moment. A worry that felt huge in the afternoon may feel small now, folded neatly by the dark. The room that felt cramped may, in night's quiet, feel spacious. We too have a scale factor of the heart, a way of letting distances soften or widen so we can rest. Let the idea of expansion settle like a blanket over the shoulders of your thoughts. No rush, no noise, only a long, patient stretching that has been underway since the first dawn, and will continue for a very long time to come. In the next hours, if you're with us, we'll step through inside-out universes and the careful matching of geometries, bridges between a collapsing star's secret interior and a cosmos unfolding like a slow-blooming flower. For now, close the book of the sky and feel the steady page beneath your hand. The night holds, the room holds, and the universe, strange and gentle, stretches just enough for sleep. Night has a way of turning the ordinary inside out. The kitchen you know by heart becomes a small theatre of lamplight and shadows. The steam from a cup makes a brief cloud that looks, if you let it, like a tiny galaxy lifting from porcelain. You stand there cupping warmth, and the thought arrives as softly as steam. Perhaps some things bloom by turning through themselves. Physicists have wondered something similar about space-time. If a black hole is a place where futures lean inward, could there be an opposite, an inside-out region where futures bloom outward from a tight beginning? In the strict language of equations, there is a time-reversed companion to a black hole, often called a white hole, from which nothing can enter and everything must leave. It sounds like myth, a fountain of matter. In practice, such regions appear wildly unstable. Any little disturbance seems to spoil them. Still, the mirror exists on paper, and papers are where early ideas learn to walk. The notion becomes gentler when we think of bounces. Imagine the crush of collapse, squeezed toward a limit, so extreme that the familiar rules give way to new ones. Quantum rules for gravity we do not yet fully hold. In some sketches, that quantum stiffness prevents a final tear and turns collapse into rebound. A star's end in such tales could seed a new beginning on the other side, a small universe budding from a parent's heavy heart. The child's time flows outward even while the parent's future flow ends inward. Two clocks, two arrows, stitched in a place no traveler could cross. This picture asks for a pause. We must be careful with metaphors. Budding is not birthing. A bounce is not a tunnel. If a small universe blooms, it does not open like a door in the parent sky. Its space is its own everywhere, not a bubble floating in a larger room we might visit. From the outside, the parent's black hole remains, by all lights. A black hole, horizon, silence, nothing escaping. If a new cosmos unfurls beyond, that unfurling belongs to its own interior, unreachable, unknowable to us, except through the logic that suggests it might be so. There are more imaginative bridges. Some write of throats, wormholes, passages through curved space-time that could in principle connect distant regions or different universes entirely. The simplest varieties close too quickly to be crossed. They are throbbing mathematical daydreams, lovely but brief. To hold one open requires matter arranged in ways the catalogue of nature has not yet offered us, with pressures that behave strangely. Even so, image has been good for our intuition. It reminds us that inside and outside are not always about geography. They are about the way time and distance are braided by gravity. Beyond wormholes and white holes, some have suggested a wider ecology of universes, a branching family tree. In these stories, black holes are seeds. Each seed blooms into its own cosmos, with slightly different settings. The way seeds of the same tree carry small variations. A quiet selection pressure might follow. Universes with settings that favor many black holes would make many children, and so the family line would drift towards settings that make stars easy, heavy stars frequent, and collapse common. Survival of the most generative. It is an elegant loop, a naturalist's thought transplanted to cosmology's wide field. We should smile at the elegance, and then set it gently on the shelf marked, perhaps. For such a picture to be science in the strict sense, it must lean toward things we can measure. Do these ideas predict an imprint on our sky? Do they propose a number we can check, a correlation we can chase in the data? Sometimes they do, often they do not yet. That's all right. Some ideas spend a season in philosophy's garden before they climb back over the fence with testable fruit. If there is an inside-out kinship between black holes and big bangs, it may live less in the plotline and more in the geometry. In the quiet center of some black hole solutions, the coordinates do something subtle. The roles of space and time change places. What we called radius becomes a kind of time. What we called time becomes a kind of space. In that interior book, pages flip in a different direction. Under those rules, the mathematics can resemble an expanding cosmos, volumes increasing, slices changing with what now counts as time, a rhyme, not a proof. You might hold a seed in your hand to feel this. Outside it is small, smooth, quiet. Inside, a whole season of shapes is folded, an instruction written in green. When it finds a dark hold in the soil and a little water, it does not explode outward from a center. It unfurls cell by cell, scaffold by scaffold, turning itself right side out. The seed did not need an outside meadow to be itself. The meadow appears as the seed's inside becomes world. A metaphor, of course. And metaphors can lead us astray, but they can also soften the muscles around a hard idea so it can settle without strain. A light chronology of these thoughts might go like this. With generous ellipses, we built the language of black holes and big bangs in the mid-20th century, learning that horizons and beginnings are not only possible, but natural in general relativity. We pushed solutions past their first pages to see what lay beyond. Extended diagrams that map every allowable region, including places where time and space trade roles. We realized that quantum fields ask to be included, and when they are, horizons seem to carry a temperature and an entropy, as if they wear memory as a shawl. We wondered whether that memory points to deeper principles, perhaps a rule that the stuff inside can be encoded on a boundary. We speculated about bounces where quantum stiffness blocks final collapse. We tried on family trees of universes. We learned at each step where the math is sturdy and where the map is fog. In your life, you may have felt this rhythm, an ending that was not an end at all, but the beginning of a new chapter that could not have grown without the closing of the last. A job lost that made room for a calling found, a door that when shut gave you a room of your own in which something delicate could unfold. Not every ending is merciful, and not every rebound is swift, but often with time we notice that some energies release only when they are held, and some expansions begin only after a patient inwardness. So are we inside a black hole in the sense of being the bright interior of some larger collapse? The modest answer is that we do not know, and that we do not need that story to explain what we see. Our standard picture, an expanding universe with a hot, dense early phase, fits much of the sky's testimony without apparent black hole's help. But the inside-out ideas have done their quiet work. They have taught us to respect horizons, to treat beginnings carefully, to imagine that information may wear a boundary, and to be humble with language. They remind us that geometry can change character, and that inside is sometimes a verb. Let the cup warm your palms once more. The steam is gone, the night is as it was. Somewhere the idea continues to unfurl in rooms where chalk dust hangs like a faint nebula, and in minds that travel kindly through the dark. We will follow it to a stricter place next, where geometries are matched with care, where the sketches meet the rules, and where perhaps must answer to how exactly. For now, let your shoulders drift a little deeper into the mattress. The world beyond your window is quiet. Inside, a small universe, the one made of breath, heartbeat, and thought, finds its steady size. Imagine two fabrics meeting at a seam. One is a deep, heavy velvet, the interior of a black hole as the equations describe it. The other is a wide, smooth linen, the expanding cosmos we observe. If we try to stitch them together, the seam must be precise. The pattern on one must meet the pattern on the other, without puckers or tears. Otherwise, the garment will not hang right. The wearer, our physical world, will complain. In gravity's language, sewing fabrics means matching metrics, the mathematical rules that tell distances and times how to behave. At a boundary between two regions, the rules insist that space and time line up cleanly. The surface must share the same shape when approached from either side, and the way it bends must agree. A seam without wrinkles. These are not aesthetic demands. They are the content of the field equations at the border, the gentle but firm requirements that keep physics from inventing edges that pull or push without cause. Inside the event horizon of a simple, non-spinning black hole, the coordinates do something quietly radical. What we once called radius becomes time-like. It measures not where you are, but when you are on an inevitable journey inward. What we once called time becomes space-like. It stretches across what now serves as a kind of interior landscape. The geometry in there is not the same kind of homogeneous, isotropic expanse we use to model the large-scale universe. It is homogeneous in a different way, and it is not isotropic. Directions are not interchangeable. If we were to live in such a place, our sky would, in general, carry a preferred direction, a built-in asymmetry we could, with patience, detect. Our actual sky is strikingly even. It wears only a small dip in temperature from our own motion through the cosmic glow, and little ripples, tiny, precious imperfections that seeded galaxies. That evenness, that near isotropy, is a soft veto against simple identifications of a black hole interior with our universe. To rescue the idea, one must look for special conditions or more elaborate interiors, spinning holes, charged holes, dynamic collapse where matter falls for a time rather than sitting still forever, or quantum-corrected cores where the crush softens. Each change adds freedom, and with it, responsibility. The seam must still hold, and the resulting world must look like ours when we step outside, in the dark, and turn our face to the all-sky hush. There is another seam to respect: entropy and the arrow of time. A collapsing star that makes a black hole starts in relative order and ends in extraordinary disorder, an object whose entropy scales with the area of a horizon we cannot touch. Our universe, by contrast, began in a low entropy state, in the language of gravity, smooth and simple, with complexity growing later as structure formed. If we were the interior of a collapse, we must explain how a high entropy exterior could give rise to a low entropy beginning inside. Or we must revise our understanding of what counts as disorder when geometries change character. It is not impossible. It is delicate. You can feel this delicacy in a domestic way. When you turn a shirt inside out, the seams show, the tag becomes visible, the finish work that is hidden during the day comes to light. If the seam was rushed, the thread bites the wrist. If it was done with care, the shirt is comfortable either way. Physics asks for that level of finish. The junctions between our metaphors and our measurements must be comfortable in both directions. Some matching attempts are bold. They imagine a bubble of expanding space, nested within a larger collapse, separated by a thin, energetic shell. The shell's tension and motion carry the bookkeeping that allows the two regions to coexist without violation. Inside the bubble, the scale factor grows. Outside, the larger world continues its inward fall. If the shell travels the right way through the parent's coordinates, the interior can evade the exterior's singular end, drawing its own timeline forward. To us, living inside, the shell is beyond any distance we could reach. To the outside, we are behind a horizon that admits no shout. Such constructions need careful parameter choices to avoid quick doom. Either the bubble collapses at birth, or the shell tears itself with unphysical strain. They also invite subtle questions. How did the shell arise? What matter gives it the needed properties? Is the tuning required natural or contrived? Do small disturbances grow like weeds, spoiling the tidy garden of solutions? Or does the configuration hold up against the winds? Another family of matches replaces the singular heart of a black hole with a finite, dense core where quantum gravity changes the script. The core acts as a spring. In foul slows, stops, returns. To an outside observer, the horizon remains a horizon. To an inside observer born after the rebound, the world is young and expanding. This picture treads closer to something we can imagine measuring, because it changes how black holes age. If their cores rebound, horizons could carry signatures in their late-time whisper, how they relax, how they shimmer in the night of quantum fields. But the signals, if they exist, are faint, and the night is noisy. Our instruments are newly awake to such whispers, and learning to listen. We should also honor the theorems that fence our imagination, gently but firmly, under broadly reasonable conditions, gravity attractive, matter not too exotic. Space-times with horizons tend to develop singularities in their future or past, edges where the classical description fails. Expanding universes that accelerate like ours cannot, in many simple formulations, be extended indefinitely into the past. Their lines of history thread back only so far before the fabric runs out. These are not bars slammed across the hallway. They are signs that whatever story we tell about beginnings or interiors must include new physics at high curvature. The seam again must be sewn with a thread we have not yet spun. And then there is observation, the everyday sovereign. Our sky declares a flatness within small bounds, and an isotropy that is almost shy in its perfection. It offers a pattern of tiny hot and cold spots that match a textbook for a nearly uniform cosmos with specific ingredients. It shows galaxies arranged in a cosmic web with regularities that read like chords struck on an early drum. Any inside-a-hole proposal must play those chords in tune. So far, the ordinary expanding universe model, with no parent collapse, sings them best. That does not forbid other songs. It gives us a key and a tempo they must respect. If this feels constraining, think of the seamstress at her quiet work table. The constraints, the grain of the fabric, the shape of the pattern, the patience of the stitch, are what allow beauty to appear. Without them, the dress won't fall right. With them, a flat cloth curves softly around a living body. Physics is like this. The equations and observations are not a cage. They are a pattern that allows the world's dress to hang with grace. In the small sphere of your evening, you make matches too. You join the geometry of a day's demands to the softer metric of night. You let bright thoughts slow unfold so they can fit the pillow's curve. You stitch a seam between alertness and rest, not hastily, not with knots, but with an easy hand. When the seam holds, you sleep. So can the geometry of a black hole interior be matched to a universe like ours? On paper, in qualified ways, yes. There are seams one can sew with care and conditions. In nature, as far as the sky tells, the simplest garment we wear is still the standard expanding cosmos that needs no parent. The inside-out dress hangs in the closet of ideas, tailored, intriguing, waiting for a season when measurements or mathematics ask us to try it on. Let the thought rest there. Outside, the late train has passed. The tree that swayed before stands quieter now. The horizon of your room has not moved, but your mind has. A little, through velvet and linen, through seeds and seams, to a place where joining is as important as imagining. In the next gentle stretch we will sit with time itself, how wells deepen it, how horizons tinge it red, how now becomes a local kindness rather than a universal command. For tonight, and this moment, now is enough. Some nights the clock seems to soften. The minute hand lingers as if it too were drowsy. Somewhere far away a late bus sighs at a stop, and for a moment the whole street shares a single patient breath. Time has moods like this. Elastic, tender, more like weather than machinery. Physics in its careful voice agrees that time is not a rigid rail. It is a thread woven through space, measured not by a cosmic master clock, but by the paths things take and the fields they swim in. Each traveller keeps a diary called proper time, the time on their own wristwatch, their heartbeats count. Two travellers who part and reunite may compare diaries and find them honestly different. In flat, quiet space, this difference comes from speed. One who loops fast returns with fewer ticks. In curved space, gravity adds its own edict. Clocks deeper in a gravitational well tick more slowly than clocks up high, a gentle, measurable stretch in the book of moments. You can invite the feeling with a small ritual, sense your pulse, not to fix it, only to notice. Imagine a clock resting beside you, then the same clock on a mountain summit, sharing the same sky. The summit clock, held higher in Earth's field, will tick a whisper faster. The bed clock, held slightly deeper down the well, lingers. The difference is shy, less than a blink in a lifetime at ordinary heights. But it is real, so real that satellites wear the correction like a scarf. Without it, their timing would miss by yards, then miles, then meaning. Gravity does not simply pull, it composes time. This slowing is part of a larger kindness. In Einstein's geometry, what we call gravity is the way space-time curves and objects, stones, beams of light. You trace the straightest allowed paths through that curve. Near heavy bodies, the curve is steep. Near horizons, it becomes a well where straight ahead leans inward, and time, as read by faraway eyes, appears to drag. Light climbing from deep wells stretches into red, its crests pulled farther apart by the effort. Signals slow not because they are tired, but because the landscape they cross is rich with slope. It yields a paradox-flavored thought that is, in fact, an agreement about viewpoints. From far away, watching a friend drift toward a black hole's horizon, you would see their clock slow and their light redden, their motions asymptotically delayed. It would seem they never quite cross. For them, drifting with calm thrusters and a brave heart, proper time carries them across in finite comfort. The two stories do not contradict. They describe different slices of a book that cannot be read all at once by any one reader. Now, too, becomes local in this view. In a Newtonian world, one could imagine a universal present, an absolute simultaneous page that all events share. Relativity suggests otherwise. Simultaneity depends on how you move and where you are in the curve. Distant nows smear into ranges. The cosmos does offer a practical truce, an almost natural time defined by the average rest frame of the cosmic microwave background, the gentle hiss that fills the sky. In that frame, slices of equal temperature act like shared calendar pages, and cosmologists call the page number cosmic time. Yet even this is a convention, a useful one, not a law engraved in the stars. We can follow a light chronology, lightly, through how we came to trust these ideas. Early in the 20th century, experiments with speeding particles showed that lifetimes stretch with motion. Mid-century, a small beam of gamma rays sent down a tower arrived bluer than expected, proof that light gains energy falling into a field and loses it climbing out. Decades later, atomic clocks flown around the world and clocks perched on mountaintops made the case with quiet precision. Navigation networks now correct for gravitational time dilation as a matter of daily housekeeping, the way you might set a kitchen clock that runs a little slow. If time bends, we might ask whether the bend has edges. Does it break? Our equations warn that at certain curvatures they can no longer be trusted. Singularities, points where the math calls for infinite curvature, are not places so much as admissions. Here the classical story ends, and a quantum one must take the pen. In black hole interiors, this admission sits in the future of all who cross the horizon. In our wider universe, the admission lives in the past of all we see, near the beginning, where densities and temperatures climb beyond what our current map can carry. Between those two admissions, time writes with a steady hand. Gravitational redshift. Twin clocks. Shapiro delays. These are not complications tacked on to a simple world. They are the world. They are why light curves by stars, why orbits precess, why the Mercury of our dawns and dusks misbehaves just a little from the Newtonian promise. They are also gentle companions to our question about black holes. A horizon is not only a spatial boundary, it is a place where time wears a different fabric. To say inside is to speak about futures. Once in, all roads lean toward one kind of end. To say outside is to speak about options that remain open. Time is the carpenter here, shaping which outcomes can be built. In human rooms, we learn a parallel lesson. Some choices narrow futures, signing a lease, planting an orchard, saying yes. Narrowing is not a loss if the path chosen is kind. It is a commitment that gives time a shape. Other times, we keep options open, and that openness is its own rest. Both ways, narrowing and widening, have their hour. Neither is absolute. The art is to notice which seam your day is asking for, and to stitch it with patience. If the universe were the interior of a larger collapse, as some speculative bridges suggest, then now we inhabit would be a local kindness carved inside a geometry that elsewhere slants the other way. Our days would be chapters in an interior book whose cover we cannot touch. The clocks we set by hydrogen's hum and by cesium's pulse would keep good time in our neighborhood, even if some grander time outside, if there is an outside, tells a different story, we will never read. This is not frustrating when you accept horizons. It is ordinary. Every life is lived from the middle. Let your own now be enough. The bed holds. The window keeps its quiet square. Beyond it, time is braided through space in a pattern older than cities, older than seas. Whether we dwell in an interior or simply in an expanding everywhere, the wells and slopes of gravity cradle us all the same. Your clock, dear listener, is the only one you must read tonight. Let it slow, a little, like a leaf settling to the surface of a still pond. On winter glass, your breath writes a brief fog. For a second, that soft blur holds your face, and the cold street beyond in the same pane. A reflection and a world stitched together by a thin film of dew. Edges can do that, hold more than one story at once. In physics, horizons behave like such panes. We once imagined them as absolute silences, one-way curtains that swallow light and tell nothing. Then a quiet revolution arrived. Horizons might have temperature. A black hole, thought to be the ultimate cold, glows faintly when quantum fields are allowed to sing in curved space. The glow is unimaginably soft for heavy holes, like embers cooling in a winter field. But the principle is warm. Horizons radiate. With temperature comes entropy, a measure of the number of microscopic ways a macroscopic thing can be. That number, for black holes, scales not with volume but with area. The area of the horizon measured in the tiniest squares nature allows. It is a startling turn. For ordinary stuff, gas in a room, water in a kettle, entropy grows with volume. More room, more ways to arrange. For a black hole, the ledger is written on the surface. The interior may be where stories end, but the bookkeeping somehow lives on the edge. One can hold this feeling in a simple image. Imagine a library in which every book's entire content is encoded on its cover in tiny swirls. The room might be packed floor to ceiling, but the count of possible libraries depends only on the wall area, not on how deep the shelves run. It is an inversion of our instinct, and yet the equations insist. The entropy of a orb is proportional to its area, in fundamental squares, a constant of nature setting the scale. When the horizon grows, when matter falls in, the area increases, and with it, the entropy. When a black hole slowly radiates away, the book shrinks, and the entropy of the outgoing radiation plus the whole together keeps the universe's grand sum within the familiar rule. In closed stories, disorder does not diminish on its own. Why should edges know so much? One family of answers leans on the entanglement of quantum fields, the subtle intertwining that makes the state of a here depend on the state of a there. A horizon divides a world into two regions. If you can only read one side, the hidden connections with the other side show up as a kind of ignorance, a thermal haze. The temperature and entropy you attribute to the horizon might be, in this view, the cost of not seeing the whole. Even an accelerating observer in otherwise empty space detects a warm bath, where an unaccelerated observer feels only vacuum, a telling sign that temperature can be in the eye and motion of the beholder. From these edges, a larger suggestion unfurls. Perhaps the ultimate description of a region is written on its boundary. Not literally with ink, but in the language of degrees of freedom, the bookkeeping of information. This suggestion earned a name that is now a lantern in modern theory, the holographic principle. Like a card that holds a full image in a shimmering surface, a boundary might encode the bulk. In certain settings, the principle is more than poetry. It is a precise duality, a dictionary between a gravity-filled interior and a boundary theory without gravity that captures the same physics in a different tongue. Our own universe is not known to be of the cleanest type for such a dictionary, but the existence of even one perfect example changes the weather. It says that space, gravity, and quantum information may be different faces of the same quiet coin. Information, then, becomes a central character. When something falls into a black hole, where does its information go? The patterns and correlations that, taken together, made it what it was. If the whole simply radiates featureless heat until it disappears, information seems lost. But our deepest quantum rules prefer a softer outcome. Evolution that preserves information, even if it is scrambled beyond recognition. The paradox, sharp for decades, has softened in recent years, with calculations that suggest the outgoing radiation can, in principle, carry the necessary correlations if one accounts for the quantum nature of the horizon carefully. The curve that tracks entropy in the radiation, the page curve in seminar rooms, seems to behave as it should, in models that capture key features of gravity and quantum entanglement. It is not a full answer, but it is a kind hand extended across a troubled stream. What does this mean for our gentle question? Are we inside a black hole? It changes the flavor of inside. If horizons are thermodynamic, if they hold temperatures, entropies, and information, then living within a horizon, of whatever kind, is not just about being walled off. It is about being part of a system whose boundary stores a kind of memory. Our universe on large scales behaves as if it carries a cosmological horizon, a boundary beyond which we cannot receive signals. Some lines of thought, careful but speculative, assign such horizons a temperature and an entropy too, like a quiet cousin to the black hole. If so, the inventory of our cosmos might be read from a far edge we cannot touch, the way a shoreline tells the story of currents we never saw. We should move with caution here. The evidence that our cosmic horizon has a straightforward thermodynamics is suggestive rather than closed, more an elegant harmony than a measured note, and the holographic idea, while powerful in certain corners, is a toolkit, a way of building and translating, not yet a single theorem we can apply everywhere. Still, the theme is strong. Edges matter. They store, they glow, they count. Edges matter in human rooms as well. The perimeter of a small garden gathers the most life. The fence where vines climb, where birds pause, where sun and shade trade places. The skin is where nerve endings bloom. A touch on the arm carries a library of context back to the mind. Even memory, it seems, favors boundaries. We recall beginnings and endings of days more clearly than middles. Our senses, like physics, seem to write their richest notes at the edge. There is a timeline here too, light as snowfall. In the 70s, the thought that black holes carried entropy arrived, like a gentle scandal. Soon after, the faint glow at the horizon, a temperature inversely tied to mass, entered the lexicon. Debates about information rose and subsided like tides. In the 90s, the holographic bird call sounded from deep woods, and a precise echo answered from a different valley, a duality that gave flesh to metaphor. In the years since, entanglement and geometry have braided into a single braid in dozens of models. Each strand alone is lovely. Together they make a stronger rope. If we are ever to say with confidence that our universe is an interior, these ideas will likely play a role. An interior should have a boundary with thermodynamic grace. It should store information in a way that honors quantum rules. It should let geometry be read as a chapter in the book of entanglement. And it should most of all meet the sky's testimony, the glow of the early universe, the web of galaxies, the quiet push of acceleration. Theories that live only on the chalkboard. Are rehearsals necessary, beautiful, but the performance is under the stars. For tonight, the metaphors can carry us just far enough. Imagine the cosmos as a great lake at dusk. We float a few strokes from shore, where the water is deep, but still. The surface holds the blush of the sky, and a sketch of our faces. Everything that happens in the lake is reflected, in some softened way, on that skin. We cannot pick up the surface and read it like a page, but we can feel that the place where water meets air has learned the whole day in ripples and light. Let your breath write briefly on the window and vanish. Edges reveal themselves, and then grow quiet. Heat becomes memory, memory becomes form, form becomes calm. Whether we are inside a black hole, or simply inside a universe that knows its own boundary, we live in a story where borders are gentle teachers. They tell us what we can know now, what we will know later, and how, even in not knowing, we can rest. Outside, the night has cooled a little more. The tree is still. Your room is a soft geometry with its own horizon, door, window, pillows, edge. You are the warm interior. You are the stored story. And you are, this moment, enough. Open the window of your attention just a little, enough to feel the air move, not enough to let the room grow cold. That's the mood of this chapter, not flinging the sash, not slamming it shut, but letting a careful breeze of evidence pass through. If our universe were the interior of some larger collapse, if we truly lived inside, what gentle drafts would brush our skin? What fingerprints could we, unhurried and honest, look for in the night? We begin with shape. Space can be open, closed, or nearly flat, like a saddle, a sphere, or a tabletop writ across everything. In an interior born from collapse, many naive geometries tend to curve strongly. Our sky, by contrast, speaks of remarkable evenness. Angles add almost the way Euclid promised. The first peaks in the baby picture's ripples sit just where a nearly flat stage predicts. If we lived in a sharply curved interior, circles would not behave quite so politely. We would find the pattern of hot and cold speckles in the ancient light, stretched or squeezed in a way that refuses the simplest expanding stage tail. Instead, the pattern hums in tune with near flatness. Not proof against an interior, subtler versions can mimic flat, but a first quiet vote for ordinary. Then, symmetry. A black hole interior in its simplest dress carries a preferred direction, a special axis hidden in its weave. Our sky, once we subtract the tiny tilt from our own motion, looks astonishingly the same in every direction. We look north, the same softness of variation. South, the same. East, west, the same again. Faint hints of asymmetry come and go in our analyses like gusts that ruffle but do not uproot. If a grand interior were anisotropic at birth, it would need a clever mechanism to sand down those directions without scarring the plaster possible. But the plaster, as far as we can tell, remains smooth. Tobobachi is another lantern. Does space wrap around on itself like a quiet hall with doors that lead back to the same foyer? In a multiply-connected cosmos, distant parts of the early glow could repeat, matched circles in the sky with the same mottled freckles rotated and scaled like a wallpaper pattern discovered at last. People have looked for such circles with patient algorithms and long nights. So far, the wallpaper has not revealed an obvious repeat within the distances we can see. If we live inside a special interior with small spatial loops, the loops must be large, or the pattern cunningly hidden. We can ask horizons to whisper too. An interior with a true event horizon at its boundary would be a one-way promise about futures, not merely a limit of age and speed. Such a horizon might carry a temperature, a faint warmth tied to the expansion rate, or to the boundary's character. In a universe that accelerates gently, that warmth would be real in principle, though so dim as to be beyond our thermometers for now. Still, it gives a thread. If horizons have thermodynamics in the way some deep arguments suggest, their bookkeeping must be consistent with the way structure forms, with the way galaxies cluster, with the way the baby light's ripples add up to a tidy census of everything. The numbers agree most easily in the simpler story, an expanding universe with a quiet, smooth push, not an interior wrapped by an exterior we cannot know. We might search for parallax on the grandest scale, the slow drift of distant patterns against yet more distant ones. As the expansion's details evolve, an interior stitched to apparent collapse could in some versions leave a trace in how far-off voids and clusters slide across the sky over centuries, how light's paths bend not only by local mass but by global seams. Our instruments are only beginning to learn these millimeter-arc-second dances. Their teachers are time and patience. There is the arrow of time to consider, the ledger of entropy. A collapsing exterior tends toward high entropy. Our beginning, by the measures gravity prefers, was low and smooth, with only tiny ripples. If we are an interior, the seam must transform disarray into pristine conditions without sleight of hand. That could happen if the map of disorder rewrites itself across the seam, or if the interior is born in a state that, from its own perspective, is simply initial. But such a move has to reconcile with what we count now: the growth of structure, the cooling of light, the way early nuclei formed when the world was still a luminous fog. Every tally we keep so far aligns with the standard script, no exterior needed. Then there are signatures more ambitious. An interior might prefer certain gravitational waves, a background hum with rhythms unlike the chorus expected from ordinary early universe stories. It might leave tiny non-random fingerprints in the freckles of the primordial glow, correlations between far-separated spots that standard inflation or other smoothing tales do not favor. It might bend the statistics of the web of galaxies ever so slightly off-key. We look, we compare, we listen. The chorus we hear for now is the one we expected from a universe that stretched early enough to iron its creases, that cooled, that gathered, that accelerated later on. None of this is a thunderous no. Science rarely slams doors. It latches them softly and checks again in better light. The inside a whole idea is a family of ideas, and families have many cousins, some easier to test than others. The most testable cousins are those that differ somewhere we can measure, a small curvedness that refuses to hide, a wallpaper repeat at large angles, a hush of gravitational waves with an unfamiliar beat, a late-time drift of far-off patterns that won't match our best map. As yet, the sky keeps choosing the plain story we already love for its modesty. You can feel the same habit in your own life. Most evenings, the world behaves as usual. The kettle boils. The streetlight flickers on, a pale coin in the dusk. Once in a while, a new sound slips in. A fox's sharp bark, a neighbor's unexpected song, and you tilt your head. If it returns, if it sits in a pattern that repeats, you name it and add it to the map of your place. If not, you smile and let it go. Our listening for cosmic interiors is like this: attentive, unafraid of surprise, happy to accept the familiar if it continues to fit. So how would we know? We would know by weight of pattern, by geometry that won't lie, by symmetry that won't yield, by edges that glow in a way our thermometers can trust, by statistics that stay off the beat even as data deepen. Until then, the most restful answer is the simplest. We are in an expanding universe whose horizon is a horizon of time and light, not a one-way membrane into an inescapable end. Outside your window, the night is an even field. Inside, the evenness of your breathing returns. What you can measure, this pillow, this quiet, agrees with the simplest model of rest. The speculative interiors are not banished. They are folded nearby, on a shelf we can reach for later. For now, we keep the map that works and sleep on it gladly. Imagine the hush just before dawn, when the horizon is a darker band and the world is undecided between night and day. In that tender interval, the mind is willing to entertain careful fictions, possibilities that might become truths, with a little light. So let us stand there, between, and speak of baby universes, and of ways the cosmos might slip through tight places without tearing. The word baby is affectionate, and like all affections, it risks leaning too hard. A baby universe is a candidate story that in certain extreme conditions, a collapsing star, a region where fields gather and refuse to be simple space-time might bud, forming a self-contained region that evolves with its own time, its own distances, its own sky. If that budding occurs behind a horizon, we would never sense it from outside. The parent's life continues to its own end. The child's begins, and neither can send the other a postcard. How might such a bud arise? One path speaks the language of bounces. In the classical map, collapse carried far enough leads to singularities, places where the book of equations closes. If quantum rules for gravity open the book again, the crush might slow to a stop and turn outward. Models that practice this dance replace the singular point with a dense core that stiffens space, a spring that catches in foul and throws it forward as expansion. The outward chapter, our chapter, if we are such a child, would then begin smooth and hot and grow cool and intricate, much as we observe. Another path dreams of tunnels, wormholes, stabilized by exotic arrangements that keep the throat from pinching shut. These passages are fragile in most formulations. They close at the slightest touch, the way a soap film snaps with a fingertip. To hold one open asks for pressures and energies that ordinary matter does not supply. Yet the exercise of writing them down and asking what they would do has taught us much about what gravity allows, and about how hard it is to move information from here to anywhere without paying a price in energy, time, or trust. There are cycles, too, worlds that expand, cool, grow structure, and then by some mechanism settle back toward simplicity and begin again. The word again is tricky when time itself is the yardstick. Some cycles use an attractor, a smoothing phase that irons out wrinkles each round, so that each new expansion forgets enough of the last to start fresh without piling up scars. Others lean on extra dimensions, letting the push and pull between brains in a larger space drive recurring beginnings. These ideas are not bedtime stories only. They set targets in the sky, particular patterns in the oldest light, certain tilts in the spectrum of its ripples, fingerprints we can and do look for. A different family proposes quiet exits. Rather than a dramatic bounce, the universe slides away from a would-be singularity by changing how we should count degrees of freedom at extreme density. Space could become quanta of space, grainy in a way that removes the infinities, with gentleness. The beginning is then not a violent point, but a boundary where our familiar notions give way gracefully to different bookkeeping. From this view, the word before the beginning is meaningful in new coordinates, and the universe on the far side might mirror ours loosely or not at all. Under all these stories runs a thin stream of caution. Distinguish metaphor from measurement. A baby universe is not a foal that totters from a mare. It is a region whose future is cut off from ours by a horizon, with its own causal web. A bounce is not a red rubber ball on a kitchen floor. It is a reversal in the sign of the scale factor's acceleration shaped by deep rules. A tunnel is not a hallway we could sprint down. It is a solution that must bear the weight of energy, conditions, and stability. Where do these tales touch the sky we can touch? They touch it in specifics. A bounce that replaces the singular beginning might alter the balance of smoothness and clumpiness in the young universe's light. It might change how gravitational waves were seeded, shifting their pitch. A cyclic tale might suppress certain correlations or favor others, leaving us a way to discern again from once. A wormhole-friendly world would have to confront the stern theorems that forbid easy shortcuts. If it succeeds, it will earn that success by predicting a feature we can check. Perhaps in the late-time shimmer of horizons, perhaps in how black holes relax after a jolt. There is a light chronology to our curiosity. First, we learned to accept beginnings and horizons as natural in the equations. Then we discovered that horizons have temperature and perhaps memory. Next, we wondered whether beginnings could be bridged by bounce, by tunnel, by cycle, so that the word origin means turn rather than start. In parallel, our instruments grew sensitive to whispers, to the echo of sound waves frozen in the sky, to the weak bending of light by all that lies between, to the parceling of galaxies into a web that remembers early drumming. The whispers have, so far, praised the simplest hymn, a universe that began hot and smooth, that stretched early enough to iron away large wrinkles, that accelerated later. But the choir is not closed. New voices are welcome if they sing in key. What of the human echo? We feel bounces and cycles in our days. The way fatigue becomes rest, and rest becomes clarity. The way a season of inwardness can soften into generosity. The way departures, graduations, moves, endings make room for arrivals that could never have climbed the old stair. We also feel the danger of tunnels that promise shortcuts. Most turn brittle under touch. The lesson is not cynicism but discernment. Test promises against what you can measure in your own life. Kindness, steadiness, the way small habits add up like stars into a pattern you recognize as yours. If we are not inside a black hole, these chapters have still given us a language for edges, for heat at boundaries, for the humility of local clocks. If we are, and it remains a long shot, the measurable world must still look as it does when you step outside on a clear night, a faint river of stars, a hum from every direction, galaxies as commas in a long sentence written across black. The parent's drama, if there is one, does not change the child's homework. We still add, measure, compare, and rest. Let the idea of baby universes fold itself smaller now, like a letter slipped back into its envelope. If it is true, it can wait. If it is only helpful as a metaphor, it has already done its kindness. Your room has its own quiet exit into sleep. No tunnels needed. A pillow giving a little breath, finding a rhythm. Thoughts loosening like a handful of sand. The horizon of the window is a faint rectangle. Beyond it, the world continues with or without our attention. We will, in the last pages ahead, bring this long walk home, turning from grand exteriors to human edges, to the way borders shape us without enclosing us, and to the soft answer that lives happily with maybe. For now, stay. The night is patient, and you are almost weightless in it. There's a moment when the house goes quiet, when appliances stop their small arguments, and even the pipes seem to sigh into sleep. In that hush, the edges of your room feel kind. Doorframe, windowsill, the slope of the ceiling where it meets the wall. Edges aren't enemies. They're the places where one thing becomes another, where contrast gives shape. The universe feels this way too. We've walked along its horizons, event horizons that lean futures inward, cosmological horizons that grow with time, apparent horizons that come and go like weather. Each is a change of regime, rather than a concrete wall. They define what can be known from a given perch, what can be influenced, what is forever out of range. They set the stage for a certain kind of calm, the calm of accepting the reach of a single night. Our lives are full of such physics in miniature. A shoreline is a boundary that changes with the moon. It holds a ledger of footprints and foam, then wipes the slate and starts again. City limits, drawn in ink, acquire a personality in light. Street lamps thin and fields begin, and the sky gains back a few more stars. Even conversations have horizons. Topics you can cross into and topics you circle gently, knowing that a different time, a different trust might open them better. In the grand maps, edges keep us honest. They tell us that reality is relational. You cannot speak of inside without choosing a frame, a point of view, a clock, a sense of which way time tilts. The person on the mountain and the person in the valley both tell true time, and yet their ticks diverge. The astronaut's path and the gardener's path both curve, though one curves through a steeper fabric than the other. We are given many clocks and one kindness nearby. The rules are simple. Where you rest is enough to do your sums. Human edges, when kept kindly, are not exclusions. They're invitations. A fence keeps the goat out of the lettuces. Yes, but it also gives the vine something to climb. A deadline may feel stern, but it helps a messy idea find a body. The page's margin gives a paragraph air, the skin's boundary is the site of most sensation, the place where the world meets perception and writes its small electric notes. So when we ask whether we live inside, we're really asking how we inhabit borders. If our whole cosmos were the interior of some deeper collapse, the edge that matters to us would be a horizon we will never touch. It would not be a cliff. It would be the far shore of causality, a limit so distant and so gentle that its only trace in our days is the faintest mathematics woven through the sky's baby picture, and the drift of far galaxies. A horizon like this doesn't scold. It frames. It says, from here you can learn this much. From there, someone else might learn a little more. Neither can press a note across the gulf. We have learned to love this kind of edge. It's the scientist's compromise between appetite and patience. You take what the sky will give tonight. You stack nights. You build an answer from many small agreements. You do not demand a sudden yes from the stars. You ask good questions at the rate they can answer, and you adjust when their answer is different from the song you were humming. In softer ways, we practice the same. You cannot know everything about a friend all at once. There are horizons in every intimacy. You notice the shape of their laughter, then the pauses, then the subjects that make that laughter shy. Over time, as trust expands like a quiet universe, the horizon recedes. You see more. You are seen more. No walls fall, the room just grows. There is a gentle chronology to our cultural edges, too. Once the horizon was the last hill beyond the village, then it became the sea's curve, then the hemisphere of sailing, then the globe's circuit. Later the horizon moved upward, the blue edge you could hug only by leaving the ground. Now it is the reach of radio, the range of telescopes, the bandwidth of a deep space link. Each new horizon held a little fear and a great deal of ordinary work. Each became, with time, a place of daily bread. Cosmic edges have taught us humility in a similar cadence. The first telescopes uncovered nebulae that turned to galaxies when the optics sharpened. The sky became a town of towns. Spectra revealed that these towns were drifting away in a pattern that suggested the room itself was growing. Microwaves whispered the memory of a hot beginning, and tiny blemishes in that whisper mapped our future clusters and voids. At each step, the horizon of certainty walked a few paces ahead, like a good guide on a narrow trail, never so far as to leave us lost, never so close as to crowd the view. And what of boundaries that burn? Some edges hurt to cross, a loss that changes the map, a diagnosis that redraws the days. Even here, physics offers a tender metaphor. In thermodynamics, when systems cross thresholds, they often release or absorb heat. Phase changes, ice melting, water boiling, carry latent energies that do not show in the temperature alone. The human heart has latent heats as well. When you move from one self to another, there is energy stored and energy freed. Tears, yes, but also clarity, also the relief of a new equilibrium where the molecules of your choices can settle without strain. If the universe is not the interior of a black hole, and the evidence leans that way, edges remain our teachers nonetheless. Horizons are not decorations of an exotic theory, they are how a finite-speed world organizes kindness. They dispense what is possible at a rate any creature can bear. They give us local nows, local futures, local choices that add up to an immense, coherent whole. Look around your room once more in the dim. Let your eyes drift to a corner where lamplight fades into shadow. That gradient is an edge too, a slow boundary between seeing and sensing. It's where your imagination takes over for your optics, where memory colors the dark. The universe is full of such gradients, between classical and quantum, between near and far, between what we know and what we can only phrase gently, in the conditional, with perhaps and might. And perhaps this is the quiet gift of the whole question. By wondering whether we live inside a black hole, we practice standing at the boundary between poetry and measurement, without losing our footing. We learned to ask for seams that lie flat. We tested metaphors against the sky's ledger. We let beauty lure us, but not blind us. We learned again that edges are not mainly about stopping. They are about shaping. They are where the world meets us with form. The night is almost over now. The tree outside has become a silhouette, then a darker smudge, then only motion when a breeze passes. The horizon of your day is just here, at the pillow's edge, at the place where waking becomes something softer. Let it happen without forcing. Horizons move best when we do not push. If you step outside for a minute, just long enough to feel the night cool your cheeks, you might notice how the streetlights make islands on the pavement, how darkness becomes a gentle sea and light the scattered coasts. What we don't see gives the scene its contour. Astronomers live by that truth. We draw maps not only of the bright, but of the invisible weight that shapes the bright from behind the curtain. How do we weigh the night? We begin with a promise light makes when it travels through a curved world. It bends. Not because light grows heavy, but because space itself acquires a slope, near mass. And the straightest path follows the bend. A distant galaxy's image, passing by long rivers of hidden matter, arrives to us slightly sheared, stretched, or fattened. One galaxy's distortion could be a quirk, millions together, patterned across the sky, become a fingerprint weak lensing, a soft statistical tilt that lets us sketch the unseen web. We cannot touch that web, but we can infer its scaffolding from the way it brushes starlight aside. Another map is made from sound remembered as spacing. In the infant universe, matter and light move together, ringing with pressure waves, the cosmos briefly an instrument. When the fog cleared and light set out on its long journey, the last chords froze into matter's distribution as a preferred separation scale, a faint echo repeated across space. We call it an acoustic imprint, and when we measure how often galaxies sit this gentle distance apart, we gain a ruler that stretches with the universe, a tool to read expansion as if from notches carved on time's doorframe. We listen also for the way galaxies fall together. Their motions along our line of sight nudge spectral lines a little extra red, a little extra blue, creating a pattern, redshift space distortions, that tells us how quickly structures grow. Gravity's pull writes itself into these nudges, and by comparing them across epochs, we test whether the same gravity that guides planets also guides the largest congregations of matter with unwavering rules. You can feel the flavor of these methods in the body. Imagine closing your eyes in a familiar room. The air on your skin tells you there's a window nearby. The muffled quality of sound hints at bookshelves. Your palm, brushing the wall, feels the rhythm of studs. You have not seen, but you have weighed, and the map in your mind settles into place without strain. Astronomy at its best is a larger version of that quiet sense. Many small hints, gently combined. There is, too, the baby light's own lensing. The cosmic microwave background does not arrive as a perfect sphere of static. As it passes through the intervening web, its pattern is remapped. Microscopic swirls added to its otherwise simple freckles. By teasing out those swirls, we read the sum of all the bends between then and now, a ledger of everything's pull. The past becomes a mirror held at arm's length, and the present writes on it faintly as we watch. Sometimes the invisible announces itself with drama. In the centers of galaxies, stars in quick orbits whisper a single truth. There is something small and heavy, holding court. Not a crowd of dim stars, the dance is too tight. Not a cloud, the motions are too orderly. A massive darkness, compact and calm. What we have named a black hole, we do not see its face, but we see the choreography it imposes, and in a few generous cases, we have watched light, from swirling gas, near the brink, bent into rings photon bowls, a kind of luminous punctuation around a silence. The ring is not the whole, it's the stage light's outline, where gravity turns light back on itself like a question mark. Even the faint ripple of space-time gravitational waves has become a cartographer. When two compact masses braid and merge, they ring the fabric, and the pattern of that ringing carries their masses, their spins, their distance. With enough events, the chorus can serve as a yardstick, a standard siren that measures the in-between space without needing candles in the windows. The invisible announces itself as motion, and motion becomes measure. All of this bears on our gentle question in a roundabout way. If we truly lived inside a black hole, not merely within a horizon of time and light, the invisible maps would likely tilt. Curvatures would differ. Symmetries would be strained. The sky we weigh would lean in a way that our many rulers could not reconcile. Instead, the rulers agree across strange friendships. Lensing harmonizes with acoustic spacing. Galaxy flows hum in tune with the microwave background swirls. Bright supernovae whisper the same expansion story as the largest dark maps. Agreement is not proof of final truth, but it is the most restful kind of progress. Many quiet yeses, layered. There is a human echo here worth keeping. We map the invisible in ourselves, the same way, by the arcs our actions take around what we value, by the small distortions that stress adds to our days, by preferences that repeat like acoustic spacing in our choices. We learn who we are from footprints, from echoes, from the way light bends through us when love or fear passes near. We may not see the center directly, but the ring of evidence is enough to be kind. Let the instruments sleep for the night. Let their chilled mirrors fog very slightly with the world's own breath. Our maps will be there in the morning. The invisible holds steady. The visible returns with dawn, and we, for now, can pad back to bed with the small joy that the universe, when asked carefully, answers in chords. If the universe is a library, black holes are the quiet rooms with thick doors, the places where voices drop and pages seem heavier. We often meet them as endings, stars that have spent their fuel, drifted into collapse, and crossed the line where all futures lean in. But black holes have other lives as well, and tracing them gently shows how ordinary their extraordinariness has become. A small beginning, a massive star, burns fast, leaves a core of iron that can no longer pay its pressure bills. By fusion, gravity, unpaid, collects. The core buckles, neutrons touch shoulders. A shock front wrestles with falling layers. Sometimes the shock loses and matter continues inward. Sometimes, with the help of neutrinos and turbulence, it wins and tosses the star's outer dresses back into night. In either case, a compact remnant remains. If it is heavy enough, too heavy for neutron pressure to bear, it becomes a black hole, not by dramatic pronouncement, but by slow, implacable geometry. Newborn, a black hole is small and dark, but it rarely stays alone. Space is not empty. Even the quietest galactic suburb has gas, dust, errant stars. In falling matter does not usually dive straight in. It swirls, forming a disk that heats as it rubs past itself, a collar of fire around a throat of silence. Some of that heat escapes as light, some is carried away as jets. Twin lances of particles braided with magnetic fields, focused by the disk's own structure. These jets can travel for thousands of light years, stirring the gas in a galaxy, keeping it from cooling too quickly, tamping down star birth in one era, and lighting up radio maps in another. A black hole in this mood is not merely a sink, it is a gardener, pruning and feeding the neighborhood in cycles. Elsewhere in the hearts of galaxies, black holes grow princely. Somehow, by mergers, by steady diet, by both, they become millions or billions of solar masses, sitting where bars of stars and rivers of gas deliver them guests. When the feeding is rich, we see them as bright cores, quasars outshining their host galaxies across the visible universe. When the feeding is lean, they rest, and only the innermost stars betray their presence with races too tight for comfort. These great centers seem to co-evolve with their cities. The mass of a central black hole and the mass of a galaxy's bulge keep a stable ratio, as if growth were negotiated. Cause and effect mingle like two dancers leaning into a single arc. There is the life of mergers, too. Two galaxies wander together, their dark halos touching first, their stars weaving through like flocks merging without collision. In time, their central holes find each other, dance, lose energy to surrounding stars and gas, and finally spiral close enough to let gravity's own waves drain the rest. The last few orbits sing in frequencies we can hear with instruments that are more quiet than any night. You could call them ears made of lasers and vacuum. The merged whole rings down like a bell struck once, then settles larger with a slightly different spin, a slightly different memory of how two became one. In the smallest spaces, black holes live almost as punctuation, stellar mass companions in binary systems, tugging at a partner star, sipping from its wind, flaring when patches of gas fall in clumps. They could be dozens or hundreds in a cluster, drifting like dark bees in a hive of older suns. We know these lives not by sight, but by signature. The X-ray blaze when a gulp of gas heats, the wobble of a donor star, the gravitational chirp when two compacts agree to meet forever. In all these lives, a black hole is a participant in the ecology of structure. Far from being exotic recluses, they sit at feedback loops, heating and cooling, starving and feeding, quieting and then reawakening. They shape star formation histories. They seed stories we tell about galaxies' youth and middle age. In this way, the word black is a little unfair. They are structurally luminous, even when their faces are veiled. Does any of this pull us closer to the idea that we might be inside one? Not directly. In fact, the more we fold black holes into the ordinary weather of galaxies, the less they seem like cosmic matryoshkas birthing universes within universes. Their most testable lives are here, nearby, written in the motion of stars, in the sequencing of light, in ripples we can catch whenever two of them decide to become one. The grander speculative lives, seeding baby universes, tying their horizons to new beginnings, remain gentle possibilities packed away with our chalk and owl, perhaps. But the ordinary is not small, it is grace repeated. A black hole at a galaxy's heart restrains or enables the growth around it with a long, patient hand. A smaller one in a binary tips the balance of a partner's life. A swarm in a cluster heats the gas just enough to keep endless stars from forming too quickly. In each case, the role is a kind of editing, curating how energy is spent, how order is maintained, and then loosened. You practice something like this in your days. Not everything can grow at once. Some projects demand pruning so others can bloom. Some rooms need quiet, so a single voice can be heard. Other rooms thrive on conversation where many glow. You open a valve here and close a valve there, not because you love control, but because you love the health of the whole. Black holes in their many lives are editors of the cosmic draft, ensuring the paragraph of a galaxy reads cleanly and can be revised. And still, there is the intimate life we never see, the last minutes for anything that falls too near. The poetry tempts us to follow, but we resist, not because we are afraid, but because we are honest about horizons. They are where our knowledge chooses to bow. For now, if some of those ends seed beginnings elsewhere, we will welcome the day the sky confirms it. Until then, we let black holes be what they certainly are. Dark rooms that regulate the library's mood, quiet keepers that give nearby pages their contrast and their calm. Perhaps before you turn back under the covers, you might think of the door to your own quiet room as a little horizon. On one side, the hallway's lights, on the other, the dim, where rest can gather. You cross it each night, without fanfare. The door does not ask for an oath, only for a hand on the knob. Close it softly, and let the room do its editing, lowering appetite, dimming noise, helping the day's bright clusters relax into a single clear page. In the chapters ahead, we'll step sideways from astronomy into the ways we name and narrate the dark. How myth, language, and metaphor built early maps that even now steer our attention. And then we'll try a thought experiment or two, letters addressed to a horizon, messages that may never be read, and what it still means to write them. For tonight, the library is open, the quiet rooms are kept, and the reader, sleepy and kind, is at a small desk by a window. A page waits. The night leans in like a patient friend. A pencil, cool to the fingers, rests where you left it. Before there were telescopes, there were nights like this. Ink and breath and a sky that felt both near and immeasurably far. We have always named the dark first, then understood it later. Names are little lanterns. They do not banish night. They outline a path through it. Long ago, people stitched stars into creatures and cups, into hunters and rivers, into stories that would fit in a child's ear. Constellations were not claims about physics. They were memory palaces, hung overhead. They helped us carry seasons, mark migrations, keep faith with cycles. Even now, when we speak of a black hole, we are still naming with metaphor. Color and cavity, absence and interior, so the mind can pick up the idea without dropping it. But names can tighten, like shoes worn too long. To call a black hole a hole invites the thought of a physical pit in a floor that lies beneath space, and there is no such floor. To call the universe an expansion tempts us to picture a balloon in a room, when the room is what changes size, the balloon an analogy with borders of its own. We step carefully because every metaphor is a map with a scale bar we must not ignore, useful but true only within its range. There is a kindness in how language and science walk together. We begin with images, the loom of space, the fabric of time, the curvature's well, and then gently we trade those for equations that do the same work without the risk of confusion. Yet the images linger because they serve the night side of learning, the part that settles before sleep and organizes itself there. No one dreams in tensors, we dream in stairs and lakes, in horizons and doors. If we listen for a quiet chronology, we hear our naming ripen. At first, the dark was simply the other half, a cycle of rest, a place for stories. Then it became a direction. The west wind is coming. The night will be cool. Later it became a scale. The sea is dark because it is deep. The mountain is dark because it holds storms. With glass and patience, the dark became a substance of sorts, the regions between stars where dust floats and absorbs, the halos in which galaxies swim, the invisible matter inferred from motions that refuse to obey bright mass alone. We named dark matter, dark energy, not to mystify, but to mark. Here is weight we do not see, here is a pressure we do not know. The names are placeholders, labels pinned to a corkboard while we collect clues. They say gently, do not pretend this is solved. Myth has its quiet sovereignty here. Before horizons were integrals, they were boundaries in stories, coastlines we were told not to cross, gates watched by patient guardians, underworld thresholds passed with gifts and cleverness. We smile now, but the mood survives. A horizon is still a place to be courteous, to lower the voice, to admit that the map changes beyond. Our physics refines the rules, our old narratives keep the posture humble. There is risk, of course, in carrying myth too near the instrument. If we insist that a whole must swallow and never whisper back, we could miss the faint lawful heat of a horizon. If we insist that expansion must explode, we could miss the calm arithmetic of a scale factor that only breathes. Names are first drafts. The discipline is revision, keeping what guides, trimming what misleads. You know this from your own rooms. You may have a pet name for a chair, a corner, a mug. The names are shorthand for functions that matter. The reading chair, the thinking corner, the winter mug. Should you change houses, the names travel loosely. A new chair learns the old role, and the name shifts without complaint. We do the same with ideas. The fabric of space-time lives now in many contexts. Sometimes we mean the metric, sometimes the manifold, sometimes just a feeling that geometry has agency. The name's job is to remind you where to sit. The work is done by what you do once seated. So what shall we name the dark between chapter 11 and the gentle closing still ahead? Perhaps we call it the vestibule, a small, calm place where we check our pockets for metaphors that will serve, where we set down the ones that will not. Inside a black hole is one of these tricky phrases. It grabbed us helpfully. It kept us curious. It also asked us to be precise, inside with respect to which horizon, with which time, with which seam sewn so the garment hangs well. There is a hopeful symmetry to how naming matures. At first, the names are grand and certain. Later, the names are modest and exact. We started with ether, an all-filling medium we could almost feel in our teeth. We ended with fields, specified, testable, not a filling, but a description of how influence distributes. We started with atom, indivisible. We ended with quarks and leptons, with symmetries that whisper how forces swap their masks. Each new name grew less poetic and more precise, yet the poetry never left. It moved from the label to the relationship between labels, the way the sky's many phrases sing together in key. You may be ready now to put your pencil down. The page has served. The window holds its quiet square. Outside, the streetlights have made their islands of rain-wet pavement. and the sea between them is a dark we understand well enough for tonight. Our maps of the invisible will keep improving. Our words will keep being revised. Both will, if we are gentle, remain porous to wonder. Let the name horizon soften on your tongue once more, not a line to fear, a place to bow slightly and speak in a low voice, a place where you promise to come back with better questions and a warmer coat. We'll carry one more set of questions forward, letters we might write to such a boundary, notes sent to a place that may never read them, and the curious, calming act of writing them anyway. Imagine a table with a single envelope laid out, cream against wood. The flap is unsealed. The room is very quiet. Only the occasional thread of air moving through a vent, only a car far away. You sit and you write, Dear Horizon. It is a childlike act, and also a physicist's. We often pose questions to places that cannot answer. We address notes to regions beyond reach, black hole interiors, the prior side of the beginning, the very distant future when stars have mostly gone to ash. We know, with clear eyes, that a reply will not arrive. And yet the writing does something. It clarifies what we mean. It teaches us which questions are well posed within the frame we inhabit, and which are only hunger dressed as inquiry. Your first letter might be simple. Are we inside you? The horizon, if it could speak, would say something like, inside and outside are relational words. Choose your observer. Choose your time. In one frame, I am a limit that recedes. In another, I am a boundary that cannot be crossed. Do not be sad about this. It is how clocks and light cones keep their promises. Another letter could be more tender. If you have a temperature, what warms you? Is it the ignorance I have about the region beyond you, turned into heat by my limited view? The horizon could reply, gently, Your question is close to how quantum fields behave near me. The warmth you sense is not a secret fire, but the accounting you must do when you throw away the part of the wave that lies beyond. The world remains pure. Your ledger shows a thermal blur. A third letter might be playful. If you store information proportional to your area, are you a kind of page? Am I written on you, faintly? At this moment, the horizon would perhaps decline to answer directly, and that restraint would be its own guidance. It would remind you that metaphors are patience testing, that being stored on and being mapped by and being dual to are different phrases with different obligations. The letter would not be wasted. It would have trained your discipline. Name what you can test. Keep what you cannot in a folder marked later with tenderness. Now imagine a practical letter, one for a traveler. If I cross, is there a sensation? Do I feel a seam? The horizon, kind as always, would say, no seam at the crossing, no sting of needle. Local laws are smooth. Only your future narrows. Only distant friends will claim, forever, that you never quite arrived. You would seal that envelope with a sigh, and with respect. Some answers are solemn not because they are grand, but because they insist on limits. There is a letter we must also write to ourselves. If the universe is not an interior, why does the question soothe me? The reply might arrive in your own handwriting, because it teaches you to befriend edges, because it lets you practice curiosity without demand, because it offers an image for commitment. The way futures converge inside a choice as surely as geodesics lean inward inside a horizon. Inside a decision, you are inside a black hole of your own making, and that is not a trap, it is a vow. In physics, the act of letter writing often takes the form of Gedanken, thought experiments. We sit quietly, like this, and imagine clocks, elevators, mirrors, rockets. We send light beams up and down shafts. We rotate disks. We switch off engines and count ticks. We do this because imagination, guided by equations, can strip away noise and make a clean scene where principles show themselves. A good thought experiment is a letter posted to reality at a clean address. Sometimes the reply is swift, a prediction borne out by a measurement in a year or a decade. Sometimes the reply is slower, an idea that needs a century and a swarm of instruments to be answered. The delay does not make the letter foolish. It makes it faithful. You might notice in this small stack of envelopes that certainty is not the point. Relief is. The writing clears a path through the thicket of maybes. It replaces the ache of a vague wondering with the calm of a precise not yet. It reminds you that a question can be complete, even when an answer cannot arrive. This is a habit worth practicing in the rest of life. Write letters to thresholds. Dear next week, dear conversation I'm afraid to have, dear place I may never see. Say what you mean to ask. Seal the envelope, place it in a drawer. The drawer is a horizon too. There is physics hidden even in the stationer's details. When you write, dear horizon, you define a boundary and choose what you will include in your system and what you will trace over, what you will let go. Thermodynamics begins that way. Draw a line, count what passes, keep the ledgers honest. So does information theory. Decide what part of a signal you will read, accept that compression is a form of forgetting, and let your curiosity be efficient without becoming thin. In the end, of course, the letters are for you. Horizons do not answer. The act of writing decorates your interior, gives your night a shape that sleep can follow. You may, if you like, write one last note now, in your mind, 10 words only. Thank you for the edge. I will be kind within it. Slide it into the last envelope. Leave it unaddressed. Some messages do not need to travel. When you blow out the imaginary candle, the room remains the room. The window is the window. Beyond it, the sky keeps time without hurry. Whether or not the universe is an interior, you have found one, quiet, warm, bounded by a horizon you can cross at will by closing your eyes. There will be a final answer soon, a soft one that gathers the threads without pulling tight. For now, tuck the stack of letters away, let the drawer close, and let the quiet have you. Completely for a while. We have wandered far and gently, through rooms of geometry and kitchens of steam, across horizons that glow with a whisper of heat, and maps drawn from light that bends as it passes. We have let the question walk beside us like a considerate friend. Are we inside a black hole, not to summon spectacle, but to practice the art of edges? Now we arrive where the question asks for a landing, and the landing is soft, almost certainly. No, not in the strict sense of living within a one-way future that ends in a singular fate, not in the sense of our cosmos being the inward chapter of a larger collapse. The sky is content with a simple telling, an early hot, dense era that expanded, a smoothing phase that tamed great wrinkles, a long cooling into web and cluster, and lately a quiet acceleration written in the faint arithmetic of distant candles, and the way space itself breathes. This script, humble and broad, threads together many instruments without forcing any to play above their range. And yet, the question stays useful, because it rewrites inside with care. Inside is not a cave, it is a promise about futures. Cross a black hole horizon and all your tomorrows lean inward. Look across our cosmic horizon and you see a limit, made not of stone but of time, the farthest light that has had a chance to arrive. One horizon narrows, the other recedes. Holding both at once teaches a kind of balance. We can live within boundaries that comfort without walls that confine. We carry forward a few truths that feel like smooth stones in the pocket. Gravity is geometry rather than grasp. Time keeps local diaries rather than obeying a single master clock. Horizons can carry temperature and an inventory of information that scales with area, not volume, as if the edges of things are better librarians than their interiors. These truths hum beneath our days, whether or not the universe has a parent we can never meet. They describe the room we actually inhabit. This everywhere room with a patient expansion. This sky that remembers its beginning in a warm lullaby of microwaves. This web of galaxies that holds its shape by a choreography we can weigh even when we cannot see the partners. There is also the matter of uncertainty, which is not a crack, but a doorway. We do not yet possess a full grammar for quantum gravity. We hold a few conjugations, temperatures of horizons, curves of entropy and models that sing correctly. But we lack the whole language. We do not know whether the quiet push that accelerates our universe is truly constant, or a melody with verses unplayed. We do not know how topology space's hidden loops might be arranged beyond the distances we can currently see. The unknowns are not alarm, they are invitations written in calm ink. You might notice how this sits with the rest of life. Answers that help are often not absolute. They are good enough to rest on tonight. You decide kindly with incomplete information. You revise later when morning brings more light. We are allowed to do the same with the sky. We keep the map that best fits the stars we have, and we keep a drawer for other maps, neatly labeled surprising, ready to be tested when new telescopes uncap and new sums finish clicking. If the strongest version of the insider whole idea is not our world, gentler kin still improve our seeing. Matching geometries teaches respect for seams. No puckers at the border where models meet. Holographic daydreams teach us to ask whether edges tell stories as rich as volumes. Bounces and quiet exits teach us to avoid declaring the end, where our math merely runs out of breath. Even the Reindler horizon of the accelerated reminds us that motion draws its own edges, that perspective is a physical thing, not just a mood. The human mirrors are everywhere. Your body is a boundary keeping warmth in and cold out, but also a listening skin where touch becomes meaning. Your days have horizons of energy, of patience, of attention. You spend these with care, and their edges are teachers rather than scolds. The act of choosing a degree, a city, a person to call home, narrows some futures, and by narrowing, makes a particular tenderness possible. Inside a vow is a good place to live. So here is the soft answer in a single breath. We live in a universe that does not require an outside to be complete. It wears horizons that invite patience and keep our questions honest. It allows beauty, mathematical and otherwise, without demanding that every elegant sketch be the world. It holds us in a geometry that is steady enough to make breakfast and subtle enough to remind us that even breakfast bends time a trace nearer Earth's heart. If you're still with me, let the shoulders settle another half-inch. The covers are a small gravity beyond the window. The tree is mostly motion now, not shape. The horizon between waking and sleep has moved very close, and you are wonderfully within it. The last chapter will not argue. It will only gather. We will carry what we need, and set down the rest, and then perhaps we will sleep, which is its own kind of horizon, one we cross each night without any seam at all. The room has become a harbour. The air is cool. The pillow remembers you, and the day has slipped its moorings and turned, at last, into a dark ribbon flowing out of sight. This is the place for a gentle summation. Not a recap with bullet points, but a slow braid of the threads we've been holding, tied loosely so you can let go without losing anything you meant to keep. We learned that edges are generous. Shoreline is a study in exchange. So is a horizon. Both separate and connect. Physics treats a horizon, not as a wall, but as an accounting boundary, a place where heat appears, because knowledge is partial, a place where information might be tallied on an area, rather than a volume, a place where time and possibility lean in particular directions. Our lives are knit from similar boundaries, front doors and calendar pages, promises and pauses. We navigate them with the same skills. Scientists use modesty, attention, and a willingness to be changed by what is measured. We learnt that time is local and kind. Your watch tells your truth, and mine tells mine, and gravity bends our pages differently. Far from being chaotic, this is a deeper order, the sort that lets a flock wheel without a single captain. Black holes dramatize this. Outside clocks see an approach that slows and reddens. Inside clocks keep walking without any scrape at the horizon. The lesson for nights like this is simple. Your now is enough. It does not need to match any other now to be real. We learned that the universe stretches like a patient breath, not from a center, but everywhere, not by tearing bonds, but by altering the scale at which emptiness counts. Light remembers this, arriving with crests pulled farther apart, carrying the diary entries of how the scale factor changed. You too have a scale factor of the heart. You can let worries recede by taking them to a larger distance. You can bring a kindness near, so it looks big enough to live inside. Both moves are allowed. We learned that invisible things leave visible signatures, arc and echo, spacing and skew. From those we built maps that agree with one another more than we dared hope. Agreement is not glamour, but it is the most restful kind of progress. Many small yeses that align like stitches, holding the fabric flat. We learn to be tender with the speculative, without letting it run the household. Wormholes can be imagined responsibly, Baby universes can be pictured with conditions attached. Holograms can trade bulk for boundary within known dictionaries. The measure of a metaphor is not how exciting it sounds, but whether it can be sewn wrinkle-free to the cloth we already wear. The cosmic microwave background, the web of galaxies, the fairness of local physics. And we learned quietly that questions themselves can be lullabies. To ask, are we inside a black hole, is to practice breathing at the edge of what we know. It is to hold a candle to a window at midnight and accept that the candle will not light the field, but it will make a small beloved circle in which a person can sit and write a letter to the horizon and feel answered by the act. If you want a last image to keep, consider this one. The universe is a lake at night, and we are small boats, free to drift. The far shore, the ultimate answers, exists, but it is so distant that it appears only as a darker band. Between here and there, the water is calm, stars fall onto the surface and break into ripples that widen and fade. Every ripple is some fact, some theorem, some patient measurement. No ripple crosses the whole lake, but together they make a pattern the eye learns to love. You do not need to reach the far shore tonight, you only need to float. If you are still awake, and it is perfectly fine if you are not, perhaps you can let one more thought loosen, like a knot slipped free. We do not live inside a black hole, we live inside a story that understands horizons. It is a good story. It makes room for breakfast and grief, for telescopes and rain, for deep questions that end not with triumph, but with a hand placed gently over a page, until morning. When morning comes, if you remember any of this, let it be the mood rather than the details. Patience, edges that guide, answers that are soft because they are true enough to rest on. The harbour is quiet. The tide has turned. Let the day's boat find its berth and settle. May your sleep be an interior that needs no outside to behold. And if you wake before dawn and the room is still blue-grey and kind, you are welcome to smile at the window and think, just once more, of horizons, then roll over and let the lake hold you.